Joining me at this Friday lunchtime. So I came up with the idea of show and tell because a lot of questions about everyday items that we use to pray, like the tefillin that usually men wear in the mornings for prayers during the week, and also the talit, which we use every day and on Shabbat. So I thought I would go into some kind of depth explaining about the history of these particular items and what exactly we do and what blessings we make when we use them. So here's a little video explaining what happens and how to put them on. And when we're done, I'll be happy to answer any questions. So enjoy.
All right, I'm going to switch over to the video. If you're on Facebook watching us, you can put questions in the Facebook stream, and then I'll come back and I'll give them to Cantor Finkelstein. So here we go.
Shalom, and thank you for joining me for this show and tell of our traditions and the items that we use every day as Jews to express our closeness to God. So today, I want to show you in detail what a talit is and what it's made of, and all the laws pertaining to tying what we call the tzitzit, which are the fringes that we find at the four corners of the talit. Before we begin, the actual talit itself, the garment, is not mentioned in the Torah at all. But the word tzitzit is mentioned, the fringes. And what happened, we think, is that originally the people in the desert wore four-cornered garments, like a sarape. And when you have four corners, you can obviously tie fringes to them. We later on didn't wear those kind of garments. We started wearing suits where there are not four corners. So the whole idea of a talit was invented, that we would have a specific four-cornered garment and we would use that to pray. And we would attach all the tzitzit, the fringes, on the corners of that particular garment, which now we call a talit. So let's look at one of the fringes, the tzitzit, that we use and we tie at the corner of the talit. Now, how we start this is we have a hole. I don't know if you can see the hole. Let's see. There we go. There's the hole. And we take 4 strands of wool, double them over as we put them through the hole, and one of the strands is longer than the others, and it's called a shamash. It's the same word that we use for the special candle that we light the Chanukiah on Hanukkah. It's the candle that lights all the other candles. Well, this is the thread that goes around all the other threads and helps when we tie the knots. So once we get it through the hole, now we've doubled it over, so we basically have 8 strands, but we take the longer one and we tie it around the 7 strands. And we do this very, very particularly. We tie a double knot, here it is, that's the first double knot, and then we go around 7 times with the shamash. I don't know if you can see that. There's 7. And then we go to 8, 11, and 13. And then we do one more double knot and let the fringes hang. Usually they're very long, so we cut them at the ends. And we do this at all the 4 corners. So why do we have 7, 8, 11, and 13 windings? The rabbis decided that when you add up those numbers, you get to 39. And 39 in gematria which is a system that the rabbis use sometimes to explain how letters also have numbers, like Aleph is 1 and Bet is 2. So when you add up all the numbers 7, 8, 11, 13, we get to 39, and 39 in Gematria is Adonai Echad. God's name is 1. If you add the letters of Adonai and Echad together, they come to 39. So, is this mentioned in the Torah? No, it's not. The only thing mentioned in the Torah is you should make 4 tzitzit on the corners of your garments. It doesn't mention what they should be made of, what they look like, if they have knots in them. This is all what we call Rabbinic Judaism that came much, much later than when the Torah was actually written. It's an interpretation of what is written in the Torah. So that is what we do if we want to make a talit that we say is kosher, kasher. We tie these knots in this particular order, 7, 8, 11, and 13. Another thing we have, which is around the top of the talit, we call that an atara. A thing that looks like upside down to you. And this is just a fancy edging, shall we say, that goes on the top. And here, I can put it over here and show you. It makes it look very pretty. Some of them have the actual blessing of the talit that we say, and others have beautiful decorations like this one. It can come in all sorts of colors. Now, there's something very interesting about the tzitzit. We'll mention it again, because in the Torah, where it mentions that we should tie the tzitzit on the 4 corners of our garments, it also mentions that one of these threads should be made blue. So why don't we have a blue thread? The answer is, we used to have a blue thread, and apparently it was made from the dye of some kind of shellfish called a chilazon. And it was lost in the mists of time, apparently. Now, there is a group of Hasidim, very pious Jews in Israel, who claim to have discovered this particular shellfish and its dye, and they actually wear tzitzit with a blue thread. So, if you want to find out more about that, you could probably look it up on Google and see what sect they are, and you could probably actually buy a talit with a tzitzit containing a blue thread. So, that is the explanation of a talit. And when do we wear a talit? Well, the Orthodox Jews wear what they call a talit katan, which is a small talit, a small 4-cornered garments that they wear underneath their shirt, and they wear that all day long, every single day. They even go to sleep in it sometimes. And you can see, if you see a very, very Orthodox Jew, that sometimes the tzitzit are hanging out from underneath their shirt. And why do they do that? Very simply, because in the paragraph that speaks about the tzitzit, it says, and you shall see them and remember all the commandments of God. Well, they're talking about the tzitzit. So if you actually see them, you can remember the commandments. Therefore, if they are tucked in, you cannot see them. That is why the Orthodox, the ultra-Orthodox, wear the tzitzit outside of their pants. And they do this every single day. And on top of that, when they pray every morning, they wear a big talit. So they actually have 2 tzitzit. One for the talit katan, wearing under the shirt, and one that they wear on top of their jackets when they pray. So what else do we use when we pray weekday mornings? Well, let me show you. We use what we call tefillin. The English name for it, phylacteries. Don't know where they got that from, but here they are. There's two of them. This is called tefillin shel yad, which is the tefillin that you put on your arm. You see the word yad on there? I don't know if you can see that. There we go. And the other one is tefillin shel rosh, tefillin that we put on our head. Rosh means head in Hebrew. Now, where does this come from in the Torah? Well, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Shema and the first paragraph after that, Ve'ahavta. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And towards the end of that paragraph, it says, you shall bind them as a sign upon your hands, and they shall be for frontlets, whatever that means, between your eyes. Once again, there are no details in the Torah about tefillin, what they should look like, what they should contain. The rabbis, again, Rabbinic Judaism, they worked out some kind of system whereby we can bind them on our hands and wear them between our eyes. And they called them tefillin. So let's look at the first of these tefillin. And as you can see, there's a box. This is a very pretty one, it's silver. These are actually very expensive, and some of the very Orthodox Jews spend upwards of $1,000 for a pair of tefillin. So we take this off, and since it's holy, we'll give it a kiss. And you can see it's a box made of leather, and underneath, this is an animal skin, which is sewn together with gut. And inside the box, there is a scroll. And the scroll contains the information which talks about the tefillin, which is binding them on your hands and wearing them between your eyes, in the Torah. So it's an actual part of the Torah. Excerpt is in here, in this one. And as you can see, there is a noose, which you can make bigger and smaller, depending on the size of your arm. And as you put your hand in, you put it here to where your muscle is, and then you take this leather strap and it goes around your arm 7 times. Again, nothing in the Torah which tells you how to do this, what it should look like. Rabbis manufactured all of this idea. It's quite brilliant, actually, because if somebody came to me and said, can you figure out what to do with you shall bind them upon your hands and they shall be frontlets between your eyes, I wouldn't have an idea. But the rabbis ingeniously came up with a system where you have this long, beautiful, you can see how long this is. And this is a strap made out of leather, and we tie it around our arm 7 times. 7 is a very, very important number in Judaism, obviously. And then let me see if I can show you this. When we get to the end of the 7, we do something very specific on our hands. We make 3 letters. We make 2 letters rather. This is the Shin, as you can see. You see 3 letters there? There's 3 parts that make up a Shin. And at the bottom, around here, we make what's called a Daled. This shape here is a Daled. And then at the top, there's a little Yud. There it is. And together they spell the word Shaddai, which is another one of God's names. So basically, we are binding ourselves in holiness and making God's name as we do it. Now that is the tefillin that we use for our arms. You shall bind them upon your hands. Now the one which we use for between our eyes is called the tefillin shel rosh. Here, and I'll take off this beautiful cover. Now this is even more intricate, because if I turn it over, I don't know if you can see, but there are 4 compartments, each containing, there we go, each containing different scrolls. And these are all excerpts from the Torah which talk about the tefillin. So again, we kiss it. And this one has a large noose with a big knot on the back. And this one goes over your head and in the back here. And when I put it on, it ends up right here where my hair begins. So people have said, well, how come you don't put it between your eyes like over here? Because that's what it says in the Shema. Well, it's just not practical. And it would be rather silly to walk around with a tefillin like this. Yes, it would be rather silly. So the rabbis came up with the idea, this is also between your eyes, but it's towards it is actually next to your brain. And they came up with the idea that the tefillin, you should be mindful of God when you put it next to your brain. And the one for your arms, when you put it right over here, which I showed you before, it's right next to your heart on the left-hand side. So your heart should be towards God. There are two blessings that we say. The first one, when we put the one for the yad on, is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu, lahaniach tefillin. We thank God for commanding us to put on the tefillin. And then when we put the one for our rosh, the one on our head, we say pretty much the same blessing. But at the end of it, we say, al mitzvat tefillin. Pretty much the same thing. And then, as we tie this around our arm, around our hands again, we made this shin. Do you remember I showed you this shin and the dalet? As we're doing that, we actually recite a very famous phrase that is recited at Orthodox weddings, Jewish weddings. We say, Ve'erastich li le'olam, ve'erastich li b'tzedek u'v'mishpat u'v'chesed u'v'rachamim, ve'erastich li be'emunah ve'adat et Adonai. I will bind you to me forever. And this is a beautiful phrase that we actually use for a bride and groom. And now we are actually thinking of ourselves as binding ourselves to God using the tefillin. I hope you have enjoyed these secrets of our traditions, and stay tuned, there'll be more. Thanks very much for watching.
All right, we're back. Okay, Cantor.
Mute. There we go.
Now turn your camera back on. All right, if you're watching us on Facebook and you have questions, feel free to put those in the Facebook chat. I know I had a couple questions as we were watching, and if any other folks who are on with us on Zoom, you can also ask questions. So one of the things I wanted to ask was the scrolls that are inside of the boxes, do those have to be changed in the same way that you would change the scroll, like in a mezuzah, for example?
What do you mean change?
Are they forever kosher? Do you ever have to change them out?
Well, no, they should be forever kosher. They're tightly sealed
Okay.
inside the boxes. I mean, once they're put in there, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there any other kind of like maintenance that you have to do with it? I know that we have some that are very, very old and they've gotten very brittle. And so we really can't use them because they would fall apart. So to keep that, and it's the kind of thing that you keep forever because they're very, very expensive. So what kind of maintenance do you do to sort of keep them up? Is that something you do yourself, or is that something there's a special person who does that?
Yeah, usually it's the sofer, the scribe, who writes the Torah. And what he will do, usually the leather gets worn, and he has a special paint which he uses to refinish it, and it makes it look like new again, just like you would do to your car seats, when they get old. So that's pretty much the only maintenance that it requires. They don't open up the box at the bottom because that's sealed. So we don't have to worry about that.
Got it. So is it because of all of the very intricate work that they're so expensive? Because they really are. I mean, we looked into buying them at one point, and they're very, very expensive.
They're very expensive, but you have to look at it from another aspect, is that if you're going to get a pair when you're bar mitzvah, and if you're a traditional Jew, you'll put them on every day of the week for the rest of your life. So if you're 50 or 60 years and you spend $500, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's a good investment for a lifetime of use.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way you have to look at it. I mean, it's the same reason that a handwritten Torah is so expensive, but on the other hand, it's for the rest of your life to use a Torah.
Right. Braden, you're on with us. You had a question. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question. Go ahead, Braden.
Oh, he said he doesn't have a mic.
He does. It looks like you're on. All right. Well, so his question was, Cantor, can you explain how putting on tefillin for the first time is like having a bar bat mitzvah for someone who's not had one? How are they connected?
They're not really connected. They're different things altogether. It's just a tradition that a young boy begins to wear tefillin when he becomes bar mitzvah. There's no law regarding that. It's just a tradition. I mean, if a 10-year-old boy wanted to put tefillin on, he could also. But I want to mention that the only thing that constitutes a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah is when anybody comes to the Torah and says the blessing of the Torah. That's it. There's nothing else.
No other requirement.
There's no other requirements.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. We've got a comment on Facebook from our friend Lee Dorfman. I agree with Cantor Finkelstein about the maintenance. However, the Sofarim say that the scrolls have to be inspected and changed at least every 7 years. True?
I didn't know about that, but maybe he knows better than I do. And if that's the case, then he's right.
So then I can see that again, that's a lot of taking care and maintenance and that sort of thing for something that's like you said, a lifetime investment.
Right.
Yeah. His other comment was he sees that as a way of them making extra money. Because, Lou has to make a little comment. Thank you, Lou, for joining us.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because isn't that the case with the mezuzah? Aren't you supposed to replace the scroll every 7 years?
Yeah, it's the same idea. But if you think about it again, I mean, they're sealed and there's no reason that anything should happen to them. So, but again, it's a means of income for some people.
It is. Maintenance is a means of income.
Right.
So the scrolls that are in the mezuzah, for example, versus what's inside of the boxes for the tefillin, are they the same thing, or there's different things written on them?
There's very specific excerpts from the Torah which are written on that you put in the tefillin. And the one that's on the mezuzah is the Shema,
right,
and Ve'ahavta, the first paragraph. The ones that are in the tefillin are from all different parts of the Torah, which make reference to you shall bind them upon you. So that's the difference.
Okay. Anyone else who's on with us here in Zoom have any questions? Looks like that's all our questions. So tell us a little bit about what's going to be in the next episode.
Next episode, I'm going to have a nice close-up look at an actual Torah. And I'm actually going to read some Torah, the 10 Commandments, actually.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. And I'm going to go into the detail just like I did with the tefillin and the talit. And I hope people will enjoy it. And please ask questions, as many as you like.
Great. Thank you. This has been amazing. We hope that we can make this a regular series because obviously there's lots of things that we can examine up close like this. So
Yes.
if anyone has ideas of things that they would like to see, we would love to take requests as well. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Cantor. And
Thank
we
you.
will see you next Friday at the same time.